So the thing that I'm proposing we do here is that we reach behind us and we grab the dust, that we reach into our bodies and we grab the genotype, and we reach into the medical system and we grab our records, and we use it to build something together, which is a commons. And there's been a lot of talk about commonses, right? Here, there, everywhere, right? A commons is nothing more than a public good that we build out of private goods. We do it voluntarily. We do it through standardized legal tools. We do it through standardized technologies. Right? That's all a commons is. It's something that we build together because we think it's important. And a commons of data is something that's really unique because we make it from our own data. And although a lot of people like privacy as their methodology of control around data and obsess around privacy, at least some of us really like to share as a form of control. And what's remarkable about digital commons is you don't need a big percentage if your sample size is big enough to generate something massive and beautiful. So not that many programmers write free software, but we have the Apache web server. Not that many people who read Wikipedia edit, but it works. So as long as some people like to share as their form of control, we can build a commons, as long as we can get the information out. And in biology, the numbers are even better. So Vanderbilt ran a study asking people, we'd like to take your biosamples, your blood, and share them in a biobank. And only 5% of the people opted out. I'm from Tennessee. It's not the most science-positive state in the United States of America. But only 5% of people wanted out. So people like to share if you give them the opportunity and the choice. And the reason that I got obsessed with this, besides the obvious family aspects, is that I spend a lot of time around mathematicians. And mathematicians are drawn to places where there's a lot of data because they can use it to tease signals out of noise. And those correlations they can tease out, they're not necessarily causal agents. But math, in this day and age, is like a giant set of power tools that we're leaving on the floor, not plugged in health, while we use hand saws. If we have a lot of shared genotypes, and a lot of shared outcomes, and a lot of shared lifestyle choices, and a lot of shared environmental information, we can start to tease out the correlations between subtle variations in people, the choices they make, and the health that they create as a result of those choices. And there's open source infrastructure to do all of this.
So to take a step back and look at one of the most exciting recent trends as applies to infrastructure within the financial sector, there's a latency arms race going on in financial networking. So we have global exchanges scattered around the world, and they all want to talk to each other for arbitrage, for market-making purposes. And so I'll show you two examples here. These are the fastest current network routes from Chicago to New York and New York to London. Chicago to New York is entirely on land. New York to London is almost entirely through the Atlantic Ocean. And if you take a look at the latencies via spread networks and Hibernia Atlantic on the right, these latencies, the round trip delays for sending a packet round trip, are actually starting to approach the physical limits allowed for photons traveling through optical fibers around geodesics on the Earth's surface. So for the first time, and this is really only happening in the financial sector, the financial sector is pushing the physical limits of information transmission capabilities around the Earth's surface. And I think that opens up some really intriguing opportunities for exploiting position on the Earth's surface.
Finally, here we see Entropic spontaneously discovering and executing a buy low, sell high strategy on a simulated range-traded stock, successfully growing assets under management exponentially. This risk management ability will have broad applications in finance and insurance. So what you've just seen is that a variety of signature human intelligent cognitive behaviors, such as tool use and walking upright and social cooperation, all follow from a single equation, which drives a system to maximize its future freedom of action. Now, there's a profound irony here. Going back to the beginning of the usage of the term robot, the play R-U-R, there was always a concept that if we developed machine intelligence, there would be a cybernetic revolt. The machines would rise up against us. One major consequence of this work is that maybe all of these decades we've had the whole concept of cybernetic revolt in reverse. It's not that machines first become intelligent and then megalomaniacal and try to take over the world. It's quite the opposite, that the urge to take control of all possible futures is a more fundamental principle than that of intelligence, that general intelligence may in fact emerge directly from this sort of control grabbing rather than vice versa.
At the same time that latencies are collapsing around the Earth's surface, information generation that's relevant to these market trading and market making activities remains distributed. So these are a couple of my favorite examples. The first one, not terribly widely known. So UBS, as one example of a firm, has recently started mining live satellite photos of retail parking lots to figure out and to try to reverse engineer store traffic. Second example, social media mining for live trading on the markets, mining sentiment, things like this. These are two of many different examples of why the information generation that's critical to making a profit in the markets is probably going to remain geographically distributed for the foreseeable future. At the same time, we want to reduce latencies and reduce spreads.
It's even getting so discrete as what you ate for breakfast. So a new technology they're developing now primarily for airports is picosecond lasers. Love this. So this is a laser which can hit everyone in a 50-meter radius and simultaneously, more or less, and figure out what temperature any part of their body is. It can do heart rate, breath rate, and it also detects off-gassing from the body. It can recognize individual kinds of chemicals or components, so it can see if you've got drug residue on your shoe or explosive residue on your hair. It can also see if you have had a lot of coffee for breakfast based on how much caffeine is coming out on your breath. Like incredibly intrusive stuff, but all data that's being gathered en masse, right? Well, what's interesting about the real world data from this proliferation of sensors, right? The traffic lights are all monitoring you and able to do facial recognition, stuff like this. What's interesting about this kind of our future 1984 scenario is that all those real world sensors are having all your data aggregated and sold and traded without you ever knowing it's being obtained.
So taking another step back and realizing that we're stuck on the Earth's surface, at least for the moment, in this geographically distributed trading environment, this is what a typical arbitrage transaction looks like if we think of it as an extended space-time event. So you have two locations that are geographically separated, and trading, even if it's pre-coordinated, needs to be to some extent coordinated after the fact, just if for no other reason than to maintain capital requirements and to maintain net neutral positions wherever possible in the case of arbitrage transactions. So this is the way things, for the most part, are done right now. And this is the way they can be done. And so various firms in the financial sector are already doing some approximation of this, but until recently, there was no universal optimal solution that was known for how best to coordinate trading in multiple locations by positioning yourself in between markets. So to be more concrete, let's say you want to perform trading on both New York exchanges and London exchanges. How do you most efficiently do that in today's latency arms race environment? And the answer turns out to be to position yourself somewhere in between, at least in network terms, New York and London, so that while you're not the first person in the world to hear the latest prices coming off a New York exchange or the London exchange, you are the first to hear the correlations between them. And you can think about this as a sort of financial or econophysical analog of reflex arcs in vertebrate biology. So if you touch something, your finger pulls away before your brain feels the pain from the heat. And this is because the pain signal doesn't have to travel all the way to your brain. It just travels to your spine, and your spine sends a signal back to pull your hand back. Same thing here. If there are arbitrage opportunities, rather than requiring a round-trip transaction, it's possible to position a coordination server at a geographically intermediate location that enables trades to be performed more quickly and coordinated more quickly. So this is the subject of a paper I wrote in Physical Review about 1.5 years ago called Relativistic Statistical Arbitrage that solved the universal problem of where to position such coordinating servers. And the answer turns out to be pretty interesting. I'll skip the derivation since we're running short on time, and I'll just skip to the results. This is the answer. Now, this is a few provisos. This is one representative solution set with lots of assumptions. The solution that I skipped through is actually far more general, but this gives you a flavor of the sort of treasure map that comes from the universal solution.
So just like Audrey 2 from the Little Shop of Horrors, who needs blood to grow, these free services need your data to grow. They are not necessarily evil, or there's no conspiracy theory, but they spy on you because it is their business model to spy on you, right? The business model of free is the business model of corporate surveillance. So you might have heard the saying, if you're not paying for it, you're not the customer, you're the product being sold. Well, in this case, I prefer you are the quarry being mined. You are the livestock being farmed. And really, it's not even about your data. Your data is just raw materials. That's what's being mined. It's raw materials for something that's way more valuable, for your profile, for the virtual you, the digital self, the simulation of you, your sim that these companies create to understand more about you. Why? Because I can't take you and I can't put you in a lab and prod you. There are laws against that, to see how you react to things, to see what your fears are, your ambitions are, right? I can't do that right now because your corporeal self has rights. But if I can simulate you, if I can have enough information about you that I can build a simulation of you, I can put that simulation in a lab. And I can prod it, and I can psychoanalyze it, and I can study it all I want using whatever techniques I want, because your simulation has no rights under the law today. So that's one of the things that we need to change. This is not just a technical issue. This is also a matter of legislation.